Hello there. My name is Eliza Miron. Thanks for joining. And today I wanted to show a post-run stretch routine. So it's very important that you stretch after your run. I just got back from my run, so sorry for being sweaty here. But I wanted to be, real and show you kind of this is what I do when I first get back from running. So literally take 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, do some stretching. For me, I have a whole separate yoga practice that's not, really completely necessary, but it is good, if you want to prevent injury, feel better, sustain a run longer, run more consistently, stretching is good as long as you're doing it safely and effectively, not doing it too much. So let's get started. So usually as soon as I get back from running, I like to lie down on my back, and just bring the knees into the chest. This kind of helps release the back. Sometimes when you're running, there's a lot of impact on your back. When I get to, over 7 miles, my back starts to kind of just really give and feel kind of weak. So I just kind of go on my back like this. You can rock your knees from side to side. And just remember to breathe as you're stretching. You don't want to lose contact with your breath, and you don't want to hold your breathing. So I just rock my knees from side to side. Kind of helps to open the low back. You don't want to have the low back so tight. And you can even bring one knee in and the other knee. Kind of do this a few times, however long you need. So you can follow along with this video, or you can kind of just pick up some tips and see what works best for you. But yeah, definitely good to make sure the low back is kind of released. So bringing up the right knee, try to bring the right knee over. Just a very small twist. I don't really like to twist too intensely right after running, but this really helps, the hip, IT band, and just kind of breathe here a little bit. Inhale, come back center, switch to the left leg, bring the left knee over, kind of breathe here. You can keep your shoulder down onto the mat. Really feel it in that left hip. And it's up to you if you want to try straightening this leg. This can be very kind of painful for runners, but this will really get into the IT band and even the abductors. So don't try to over twist. We're not really focusing on the twist there. Come back center. Sometimes I lay here for a little bit longer, just as a way to relax after a run. So inhale, come back up. Another important thing of making sure you're stretched out are your calves. And the best calf stretch is downward dog. So you can bring your hands shoulder distance apart, really try to bring the heels flat. If your heels don't come down, you can bend the knees, but really try to stretch out those calves. You can even pick up one leg and then the other leg. So this is a yoga stretch. However, it's not necessarily like we're doing a yoga practice. We're still breathing, but we're not really intentionally concentrating. We're just mostly experiencing the physical benefits of yoga, like downward dog. So I like to really stretch, a few times. You can lift one heel and then the other, kind of stretching out the calves like this. Like I said before, you don't want to overdo it. You just want to make sure, things are stretched out. And then I like to step forward, just kind of hang here, That's why it's good to do right after running. You're warm, you're loose, but you don't want to go too deep. So you can just kind of hang out here, really engage the quads. Come back down to seated. This is another one of my favorite stretches because for me, my hips get really tight in my abductors. So you can bring out a straddle. It doesn't have to be so wide. You can bring the feet in. If you're sitting and your back, you can't bring your back straight. You can always sit on a block or a pillow or a blanket and lift the hips. So for me, I like to really bring my legs out as far as they can so I can really feel, my abductors stretch here, and I reach forward. And then also it's important to keep your feet flexed. Otherwise, if you're just kind of relaxing and bring your legs in, you're not really strengthening or using that strength aspect of the stretch. So really flex the feet back, push your toes to the outside of your leg and reach forward. So my back is almost straight, but it's just not good enough. I'm just kidding. Okay, so just walk back and forth. Really feel the stretch in, the inside of the legs and the hamstrings. And then you can bring the legs together. And once again, if you're here and you can barely straighten your legs, try sitting on a blanket to elevate the hips. You can take a strap around the feet if you can't reach the feet. But otherwise, reach forward and really breathe into the stretch. So I just want to tell you one thing. When I was running in 2010, before I really got into my yoga practice, this was my stretch. This hurt to touch my toes. So after over a decade of yoga, and I'm not super warmed up in yoga right now, I can really reach a lot further. So if anybody has issues about not being flexible enough to start yoga, you have to start somewhere and then you can get to some point. Not saying, being flexible is the main goal of yoga, but, definitely over time, more practice, and the time that you put into it, you'll be able to get more flexible. It's just a matter of getting at it every day. Okay, so after this, just a few more. So another thing, hip flexors. So this is the ideal one for hip flexors. The runner's lunge. You can bring your left foot forward and really reach forward. You don't want to keep the hips open. Try to keep the hips forward and really feel the front side of the leg stretching and open. You can even do just a small little back bend to get a little bit deeper than that hip flexor. And if you're so inclined, if you want a hamstring stretch, it's a good time to do one of these. Maybe come back into downward dog. Stretch out the legs a little bit. Bring the right leg forward, and then stretching out the left hip. Doing your back bend again. You can kind of push away from the knee. Really feel that stretch in the left hip flexor. And then pushing the right leg straight. Really feeling the back of the leg stretch. And then last one, coming up to upward dog. And upward dog is a strange one because if you haven't learned it properly, it can get into your low back more than you'd like. So ideally, you want your hands below your shoulders. When you lift up, maybe you're stuck here because your back doesn't open too much. What you don't want to do is you don't want to push back into your low back. You want to lift up. So if your hands are too far forward and your upward dog is here, you can see this kind of stress I'm putting in my low back. If my hands are right underneath my shoulders, there's a straight line here, I can really lift up, even with my feet. So we're not here, we're really engaging the quads and using the hands as leverage to pull our bellies forward. So here, when I come after a run, I kind of like to sway from side to side, just really feel like the opening of the front side of the body. You can do that for a little bit. Come into downward dog again. Come back into upward facing again. Kind of go back and forth. Just helps to open, even the abs and getting into that low back again. And then child's pose is always good. And I know some runners like to do pigeon, which is when you bring your leg forward like this. So it's okay, you can bring your foot in or your foot out, whatever's comfortable. This is actually a very intense stretch. So, the hips obviously are pretty tight from running. But this stretch is have in mind that it's a very intense stretch. So just be very careful in this stretch and don't take it too far. But it is good to get into those hips. And the other one. So this one's optional. I mean, you can spend as much time here if you want to come down onto your elbows, watch TV, really try to feel that piriformis muscle here, which can get super tight in runners. Okay, and my last downward dog, my last recommendation is to, we call this Baddha Konasana. So most runners, their knees might be up like this. And this is actually where I started when I was running. You know, I could barely even fold forward. So really, you can even kind of flap the knees, kind of open up the hip flexors. This is the one that's like, you can be the most tight. So after a decade or so, you know, I'm able to get my knees down and kind of come into the full like yoga pose, which like I said, I'm not warmed up completely. But it's good to really straighten your back, reach the chest forward, bring the chin down. Sometimes I like to shake from side to side, kind of open the hips. But if you're up here, same thing. Try to open the feet, be mindful of the ankles. I just kind of open the hip flexors this way. And then you can come back, lie down again if you want. I just like to do this, kind of stabilize the low back. And that's pretty much a, 10-minute or so little stretching routine after your run. So take what you can from the video and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Be sure to subscribe. And now after you've done all this, you can go shower. Happy running.